What's next? I'll tell you what's next. Barack Obama is a socialist. The guy is a freaking socialist. Liberal, Democrat, these are just different words for socialist these days, okay? When Barack Obama becomes president, you know what he wants to do? He wants to take money from people who work and give it to people who don't work, okay? Because that's what a socialist does. But what Barack Obama doesn't understand is this country is a freaking capitalist society, okay? In a capitalist society, it's not the government's job to make sure you have what your neighbor has. If your neighbor has a nice house, it's not the government's job to make sure you have a nice house. If your neighbor has a nice car, it's not the government's job to make sure you have a nice car. In a capitalist society, it's the harder you work, the more money you make. The more money you make, the more stuff you get. That's how it works. Barack Obama wants to give everybody health care. Everybody's going to get free health care. Let me tell you how health care is going to work under Barack Obama. If you have health care now, you'll have the same health care, except you'll pay a little bit more for it. Why will you pay a little bit more? So Barack Obama can give free health care to people who don't work, and only illegal immigrants who are running around this freaking country. Okay? Your health care program, it'll be the same, except when you're going to use it, you're never going to get to use it. The freaking system is going to be so bogged down, you'll never get near a doctor's office. You'll never get near a dentist's office. Because the people who don't work and have all this time on their hands, the illegal immigrants, every time they get a freaking bad taste in their mouth, they're going to go to the dentist's office. Every time they get a paper cut or a tummy ache, they're going to go to a freaking doctor. Let me tell you something. Under Barack Obama, if you break your leg, you better hope that an ice pack and 2 aspirin will freaking heal it. Because you're not getting near a freaking emergency room, okay? The guy is a freaking socialist. What is it you don't understand? If you want to live in a socialist society, you should have moved to freaking China, but not elect this freaking piece of garbage to be freaking president. This is a capitalist freaking society. Capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. What's next? What's next? What's next?
He did bow to the Muslim king, while he did not do it to the British Queen of England. And by bowing, he showed the world that I am subservient. I do bow down to you as a Muslim king, something no other president has done with Saudi Arabia. The Saudi king is his peer. He is not his subordinate in order to bow for him. And this is exactly what Obama did. Usually it is out of respect that someone would nod his head when bowing to royalty, and the ladies will give curtsy. But Obama went beyond what is required as a head of state and bowed to the Saudi king, and that's unacceptable.
Right,
it sent the wrong symbol.
When you say it sends the wrong signal, what signal do you think it sends?
It sent a message that Islam is superior to any other master or king or president in the world, that an American president bound to a Muslim king. It also sent a message that terrorism and jihadism is giving Islam the respect it should have on the world stage, to the point that it made an American president, for the first time in history, bow to a Muslim king.
Focus on the Federal Reserve itself for a moment, in that I wonder, what percentage of the people know that the Federal Reserve is not really a part of the government, a privately owned corporation, and who owns that, the Federal Reserve? Well, do you have a comment on that?
Well, I think very few people understand how it works, because the members of Congress weren't really very much aware of it. But I think it's a little bit worse than just saying it's private. If it were just private, they'd have to live within the laws of the land of fraud, and they would have to be a public corporation, and if there's a public corporation, you have a right to know what your corporation is doing if you own stock.
And be audited.
Here it's secret, but where do they get their power? Is it the power of the marketplace that creates this corporation? No, they, in addition to being very secretive, have their authorization, their creation from government. So the government creates them, and they create a special thing. So it's much worse than just being a private corporation. It is a very secretive, private, government-ordained corporation that has the power to counterfeit money. So it's very, very unique, and much worse than just being private. It's the secrecy of it and the power that it gets through government legislation that makes it so evil.
Now, you were the ranking Republican on the House Banking Committee for a while.
On one of the subcommittees, but not on the entire committee.
And do I understand correctly that members of Congress can't even go to the Fed meetings?
That's right. I was very interested in the issue, and I was on 3 subcommittees, 2 being on coinage and domestic monetary policy subcommittee. But I could not go to a meeting. I couldn't get an audit. I couldn't even check the books. And they're the ones who create the money. Yet I felt like I was elected to be responsible to the people, and I would be inquisitive and looking into these things. Their attitude is, when you need to know, or when the people need to know, we'll tell you. They're in charge, and we're just on the outside looking in, rather than the people being in charge of the government, sending me or somebody else as their congressman to control the bureaucrats. But it's turned upside down. They have control, and they allow us to know what we want to, what they think we should know.
We have responsibility on our own. If we're managing the world reserve currency, we can deal with that. We can deal with our spending policies, our deficits, the pressure on the Fed to inflate. So I think if we do what's right, it'll benefit the entire world.
I agree with that.
In your testimony, you also talk about talking about a new international accord, and that you're working on internationalizing regulations, which literally scare me. I think we have way too many already, and they don't solve the problem. But in those negotiations, since this issue of a new reserve currency is being discussed in the ordinary media, you hear reports. Just this morning I read UN planning a new reserve currency. In these accords, could you tell me every time this conversation comes up and what is being talked about and how you relate to what the Chinese are saying? Yes, they'd like to see a new reserve currency. They'd like to participate in this.
Time has expired.
And it seems like that would be some very important information for us.
I would be happy to come and talk to you about that privately or in another context.
Gentleman's time has expired.
So you're saying if you buy $300 billion worth of U.S. government debt, that is not inflationary. The true definition of inflation is when you increase the money supply. And the immediate consequence is it sends out false, bad information to the marketplace. So whether it's when the bubble is being formed or afterwards, all you're doing is inflating constantly. You've doubled the money supply. Interest rates are artificial. People make mistakes. So it seems to me that you're in the midst of massive inflation. But I guess you have a different definition. When you double the money supply, that's not inflation itself? Or are you looking at only prices?
May I respond?
Briefly.
Inflation is the change in the price of the consumer price level, which is very stable right now. And there are various measures of money, as you know, and the broad measures of money, the measures of money in circulation, like M1 and M2, are not growing quickly.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Baca.
What I'm also hearing is that the basket of currencies that will replace the U.S. dollar will be much more heavily weighted in gold bullion. As much as 50% of the new currency scheme will be weighted in gold bullion. And the point of all this, keep in mind, is that these countries, China, Russia, and Iran, the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, they've made it really no secret that they hope to take down the U.S. economy and take down the U.S. dollar. And this is a move toward taking down the U.S. dollar and the U.S. economy by shifting the way oil is priced out of the world reserve currency, the dollar, which gives America an incredible free pass to finance wars and occupations around the world. China, Iran, and Russia don't want to finance America's military adventures in Afghanistan and Iraq and possibly Iran by allowing the U.S. to have the world's reserve currency, the U.S. dollar, which gives them this what they call coinage, or the ability to make a profit on every single transaction that is done around the world because it's all done in U.S. dollars. So this is really another step toward the U.S. economy collapsing and the U.S. as a major global power collapsing.
Some governments have a nice problem, as Senator Sherrod Brown puts it.
What to do with all the money earned from their abundance of exports, whether it's from barrels of oil or from barrels of monkeys and other toys.
They are flush with cash. The dollar is weak and the U.S. economy faltering. Those governments are on a buying spree, most recently pumping more than $35 billion into Wall Street banks brought down by bad bets on risky mortgages, but also in private equity and technology, investments Wall Street and the U.S. government have embraced.
The U.S. economy benefits from foreign investment, including investment from sovereign wealth funds.
But there are concerns about the size, growth, and secrecy of some of these funds.
So many are run by undemocratic governments with powerful strategic objectives.
Senator Kaptur worries foreign governments are buying influence and access to technology.
These deals are presented as purely financial when they are in fact political and strategic.
At issue at this hearing, China's $200 billion fund, ranking among the most secret funds in the world, according to an analysis by Standard Chartered Bank. Chinese central planners understandably want to diversify some of their $1.4 trillion in reserves, most invested in U.S. government debt.